I grew up in the Bible Belt. My father was an agnostic and was clear about that. My mother has a lot of unusual beliefs and is a very spiritual person. But we went to church sometimes, and no one told me we were going for social reasons. And it was very confusing to me. And those stories that we learned at church, or when we went to the dentist, there was always a book like Bible stories to read, were just disturbing to me. Just disturbing. I didn't know why other kids didn't seem bothered by them. I can't imagine like decorating a child's room in a Noah Ark theme, because those are the animals that got to live. They kind of remind you of all the ones that were flooded and died. So I had a lot of conflicted views, and then in the third grade, I invited my best friend to camp, and she went with me. So then she invited me to camp, and I went to her, and we were brainwashed for like a week. We had to memorize parts of the Bible. We were preached at. We prayed all week, and at the end of the week, I got baptized. And I came home, and I didn't tell anyone. My mom said, "Is there something you want to tell me about Asia?" And I was like, "No." She found out. So that quickly, I started reading, because I really loved science as a kid. I was always reading about science. I was always reading about animals. And I was like, this isn't true. God can't be this evil. This isn't right. And I started to question those beliefs. And that led me to being a devout atheist. So like in junior high, I got called a Satanist because I said I didn't believe in God. In high school, I remember opening my locker door one day and all these religious pamphlets poured out of it. The Christians Crusaders for Christ approached me on the college campus one day, and one of them asked me, they said, "Look at this, all these arrows are going up to the cloud," and he said, "Well, what do you see?" I said, "Oh, they're all getting close, but none of them are making it." And he's like, "Oh, you're so," and so we talked, and I said, I just don't believe it. I used to believe in God, and now I don't. And he said, "No, once God is in your heart, he will never leave you." And I said, "Well, I don't know. Maybe I pushed him out." And he lost it. He yelled at me. He got in my face. He was screaming. He turned red. And his buddy, grabbed him by the arm and drug him away. And this was, outside the Union with, people walking past. It was amazing. So I had a lot of bad feelings about religion and God, but I began to soften. And in my 20s, I started to think, I am not going to let people tell me what God is. I am making up my own mind, and I became a pantheist. So a pantheist doesn't believe in a personal God, doesn't believe in an anthropomorphic God, and doesn't believe in a powerful, knowing God. I believe, and there's different forms of pantheism, but I believe the universe itself is God, that everything is God, that you are God, I am God, slugs are God, our emotions, history, the life force, it's all part of God. And I come to this from a place where when I was an atheist, sometimes I doubted my faith, because I would just look at the beauty of the world and think, wow, is there really not more? I always come back to that. And I also get that feeling from reading about the world and how the world works and how evolution took place, the Big Bang Theory. Like, that is our poetry and our story. And pantheists are accused of being atheists. And I'm really comfortable with that. I forget his name, and I forgot to write it down. He's Arthur Schopenhauer? Someone probably knows. But he said, pantheism is only a euphemism for atheism. For to call the world God is not to explain it. It is only to enrich our language with superfluous synonym for the word world. I'm fine with that. And I feel like, yeah, I guess I am an atheist. But I think there is a difference. An atheist rejects God. Pantheism redefines it. And I think this is important because I want to live a life in a more poetic, artistic way. I want to acknowledge that life force, the connectedness of all things. I want to worship that. It's an amazing life we have. In a lot of religions, they think of miracles, but it's a miracle we're here. And people often ask, oh, how could I be so unlucky? This happened to me or that happened to me. Think of what a miracle it is that we even made it this far, that we even evolved, that there was a Big Bang, that we have a planet to live on. That we're even here is the odds are much, much lower than winning the $10 million lottery. It's a miracle in itself. So that's why I like the story for all ages I chose, because to me, to read about the Big Bang Theory is just, I know some people think it's depressing because it makes us tiny and small, but it's just like reading about a miracle, a mystery. And so you won't hear me saying the word God very often in a religious sense, because I know I'm uncomfortable with that word. Although I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it, and I'll talk that way sometimes me well, but out in public when to so many different people, and I don't really want to be taken that way. So for people that are new to Unitarian Universalism, we all have logical beliefs, but we're connected by our principles. And so with my upbringing, I never looked for a church. There was never going to be one for me. But a boyfriend of mine took me to the UU church in Harrison, Virginia, and I was just instantly I found my place, because instantly I was so excited about it, because it's so wonderful to have a community where we come together and we can talk about things, we can talk about different theologies, different beliefs, different spiritualities. And my theology, maybe all of yours, fits so perfectly, because one of our important principles is to respect the interconnected web of all existence. And that's my theology in a nutshell, except instead of respect, I take it a little farther and say worship it. Respect it, worship it, love it, hate it sometimes, too. I mean, people say they get angry and yell at God. Well, the part of the world is awful. Part of the world makes you want to cry. But there's so much connection and people coming together, trying to get through and over the brokenness is beautiful. So I want to share a slide with you. It's oh, it's of a sunset. It's the second to the last slide, so I put it in the wrong place. So it's my fault, not Malachi's. There. Because I think it needed to be at the end, but it's the wrong end. Okay. So I don't know if you can see in this slide, but this sunset is out at Llano Seco a few days ago, and there's rings around the sun. And so a friend of mine was out there, and he has a really expensive camera, and it had a long lens, so he couldn't take the picture. So some stranger took the picture with her phone and shared it with him. So these rings, I'd never seen anything like this, are called halos, and they're created by ice crystals in the cirrus clouds, and they refract the light, creating these halos. And like, wow, yeah, wow. And this is something right in our backyard here from Chico, and people got to witness this. And I know in the old days, people would say, wow, that just proves God exists. And yeah, I think they're right. I just think of it a bit differently. And knowing how it works, knowing the science of it, makes it no less of a miracle to me, maybe even more of a miracle. So, thank you for hearing me.